Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 1987 holiday horror film Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. And if you didn't know, I reviewed the first one already, and I will be reviewing 3, 4, and 5, and I'll have them in their own playlist on my channel so you can check those out. Now, I would recommend for the full experience that you go back and watch my Silent Night, Deadly Night review to go along with this one if you haven't watched it already, because as some people may know, or probably a lot of people may know, there's a ton of footage actually from the first film that was just kind of recut up and put into this film. I think it's about 40 minutes-ish. Well, I mean, the first 40 minutes of the film is about that. It's probably actually like 35 minutes or so. So it's significant. So I'm not going to be talking specifically about those portions that were cut from the first film because I already covered those in that review. So that's why I say these are kind of like companion. So Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, I initially was like, why don't they just call it 2? And then I thought, oh, Part 2 actually makes a lot of sense because this is a continuation of the story, literally going to Ricky after following the story of Billy. Now, I don't think they did as good a job as in the first one following Billy's story, but you do get Ricky's story, and it does mirror Billy's story, and I'll talk more about that as we go along. So first things first. This one was written and directed by Lee Harry, who also did the film Street Soldiers. Don't know that one. A large amount of the footage used was from the first film, and actually that's what caused the film to get a lot of bad reviews. I would actually also point to the fact that the original script portions aren't that great, and also the acting is like a so bad it's good type acting, which when movies like that initially come out, people just view them as just bad. And then it's over time that they become appreciated as like a so bad it's good. And I definitely am going to have to rate this particular film as a straight up film and as a so bad it's good film. Do that at the end. The original concept for this film was just to fully recut the first film and add a few scenes of Eric Freeman in an asylum so it made the first film, the story from the first film, seem like it was all in the mind of a mental patient. That the entire events of the first film took place in the mind of a mental patient. So, I will say what you will about how this film ended up, knowing that little tidbit of information of what it was originally supposed to be, it's a lot better than that idea sounds. Let's be honest. A lot better idea than that. And apparently Lee Harry is the one who basically said, nah, you know what? I think I want to add more to this than just what we're talking about, just the recutting and a few small scenes. I think we should put a different spin on this story. So you may hate this or you may think it's kind of not that great, but I'm sure it's turned out better than it would have. Do we really need the slow pan up in the very beginning of Ricky sitting there smoking a cigarette, waiting to be interviewed by Dr. Bloom? No. And there's a lot of those types of moments in the new footage where it's kind of like time wasting. You can tell they kind of put extra stuff in to pad that runtime to get it as close as possible to an hour and a half. That being a perfect example, and that kind of summing up how the pacing of the film is probably going to end up being by starting with terrible pacing. It gets better as the film goes on, but it's not great pacing-wise, let's be honest. So the orderly in the beginning of this film, I was kind of like, why is he like mad dogging this guy so much with his eyes? Like, he had these huge, intense eyes, which I thought were really, really funny. And he's just like, won't take his eyes off of Ricky. And then I realized, oh, well, they're trying to, without saying it, convey the idea that Ricky is super dangerous. And he's done some really horrible things, which obviously we end up seeing much later in the film. So that makes sense. But I do have to say that the kind of interaction, I guess I can call it that, between the orderly and Ricky really made me think, you know what? I would love for these two specific characters to be in a buddy cop film together. Like, those two characters as they were introduced in that first scene, buddy cop. It screams buddy cop. It would have been magic. It would have been film magic. And if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you don't agree with me, and tell me why. Because I don't know if you're going to convince me otherwise on this one. Like I said, the setup is insanely slow. Really seems like it was stretched for time. The whole idea of narrating the first film is a terrible film to begin with, but not bad for people who haven't really seen the first film. I do think that this would have been a much better film and would have been considered kind of more on par with the first film if they actually just told Ricky's story. You know, they could have started with just kind of giving a very quick recap of what happened in the first film. Even use some footage, sure, go ahead and do that. But with as hard as they leaned on reusing that footage for the first film, it seemed more like it was just kind of a cash grab. And it also seemed a little bit like they were trying to throw it out there with the assumption that people were not going to have seen the first one. So I guess from that standpoint, it does become a little bit understandable from like a studio financial standpoint to just be like, look, we already have all this footage. Let's just treat this as kind of a new film in a sense and bring in more of a crowd. And then people who see it and haven't seen the first one will still get the entire backstory of what's going on. So I guess I get it, but it's not great. The intercutting of Billy getting beat with the belt by Mother Superior and Ricky saying he was naughty. Hilarious. I love that. And the position he's in at that point, when he's talking to Bloom and almost kind of yelling at him, is like he's being hit with that belt at that point. And as he's telling the story, he's reliving it in his mind, basically. And you can actually look at this entire interview as a way that he's being worked up over time to the point that he snaps, and that's when he kills Dr. Bloom. Which I will say, I don't understand how he then just gets out of the room. Like, that makes no sense. Like, wouldn't the room be locked at that point? Especially with how careful that orderly was being, keeping his eye on Ricky. It doesn't make sense that he's just able to kill Bloom. There should have been someone else in the room, and I'm sure there would have been if he was that dangerous. So there's some big plot holes, obviously, but like I said, this will be rated on the so bad it's good scale as well, so just saying. Ricky saying that Mother Superior made Billy do it makes the subtext of the first film not subtext anymore. So there are certain moments within this that kind of ruin the actual experience of the first film for people, where it takes something like that, which was something that you just experience, you see it, and you process it yourself as an audience member, versus just outright saying it to you like, I think you're a stupid audience member, I just need to tell you this. So it kind of like takes away some of the magic of the first film in that sense, but, you know, it's its own thing. Note that the best gore from the first unrated film is not present in this one. Now, I don't know if that's just a difference in the sense that I watched the original one on a DVD I had, and I watched the second one on Shudder, which when I'm doing this review, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all on Shudder at that point. So I don't know when you're watching this, but you can check Shudder. Maybe it's still there. But yeah, I was a little bummed because I'm like, oh, those unrated portions of like the really good gore scenes, especially like the antlers actually showing them popping through the front of Linnea Quigley, like that wasn't there because those were the good scenes. Note that the best gore... Oh, I already literally just read that. My apologies. Ricky says everyone Billy killed deserved it, which reiterates the ending of the first film. Ricky had the same experiences and traumas, so he's basically the same as Billy. And that's what they were getting to at the end of the first film when they pan real quick to Ricky and he's like, punish. It's like he's going to turn into Billy in essence. Because he's younger, it just took him a little bit longer, and now it's his turn to basically become a rampage killer. Although he does a little, he approaches it differently than his brother did, let's say that. The more you see the interaction between Ricky and Dr. Bloom, the more you realize Bloom isn't even an actual character in this film. He's literally just there to be the wall that Ricky is talking to. Literally. Like, he's not there to be an actual character. He really adds absolutely nothing to the film. Consider how simplistic his dialogue is, how it adds nothing other than just getting Ricky to say stuff. He's a pointless character. Like, literally, I honestly kind of think it would have been even better if it was just Ricky talking to, like, someone he was living in the mental institution with, or literally talking to a wall, or talking to the orderly, like, through glass or something like that, just, like, trying to unburden himself with a story. Like, Dr. Bloom, pointless. Ricky seeing the nuns when he's a kid after he'd been adopted, it's basically supposed to be the specters of his past kind of coming for him, and it's signaling things starting to be triggered. Because at this point, he told, his story of being in the orphanage, and then he gets adopted, which is something that Billy never had. He wasn't that lucky. So he's adopted by this family, and things are going better. But then once the nuns show up that aren't actually there, you then know that they're all in his head, and this is just the first indicator that he's starting to turn. The trauma's starting to come back. The indicators that he's going to end up like Billy are starting again. Are starting for the first time. Ricky has the same trigger as Billy initially when he sees the guy get rough with the lady and expose her breasts. Now, when Billy experienced that trigger, it started things rolling. When Ricky experienced that trigger, it also started things rolling. So, but his progression was, it was different in the sense that he killed more people before the rampage. Like, Billy basically didn't kill anyone until the rampage happened. He was just a guy who snapped spree killer. Ricky was actually more of like a serial killer because he gets triggered by that guy who tries to get too rough with the lady, kills him, then kills another person later in life, and then eventually goes on his rampage. So he is more of like a serial killer than what Billy actually was. So that kind of indicates to me that he was actually more aware of the trauma and more aware of what it was doing to him and how he was. And he was kind of more fine with it than Billy was and trying to deny it less than Billy did. I'm very confused, though, as to why the woman that was the boyfriend of the guy that he ran over with the Jeep, which, by the way, that's kind of a funny scene. I don't understand why she was just like, oh, thank you. She was still with him, and she still didn't seem like he was like a total stranger trying to force himself on her without any sort of predication there. I mean, obviously him forcing himself on her was not fine, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't care for him anymore and is treating him like a stranger and is fine he's dead. That makes no sense, and this just kind of points to the writing's not the best for this film. Ricky didn't do a spree like Billy. He was more controlled. Yeah, I was talking about that, him being more like a serial killer. What I will say is probably my favorite scene in the film is when Ricky kills the guy with the umbrella. He like rams it through his stomach and then pops it open after the fact. And it's this wonderful looking, just blood encrusted, open umbrella that's through his body. I freaking love it. Like that. I didn't see that coming, and I love that scene. So a family adopted Ricky, and he found Jennifer. These are both things that Billy actually did not have in his life. So I think this kind of points even more to the fact that Ricky was more cognizant of what was going on with him, and he kind of chose the violence more than Billy actually chose it. Billy was trying very much to stay away from that part of himself, and he went on that killing spree, and then he was done. Ricky, like I was saying, he killed some people along the way, and then eventually went on his spree, but he had things in his life that kind of normalized him way more than what Billy had. So I think that was kind of in there to kind of show how Ricky was kind of more terrible than Billy in a sense. I do like how mesmerized by the violence Ricky is when they're at the movie theater. He's at the movie theater with Jennifer, where he kills that one guy on the floor, which you don't really know what he's doing. I assume he's choking him at that point. And the fact that nobody like stops the movie or is a bit concerned about it is ridiculous. By the way, if you hear things rustling, it's my cat in the blinds. So my apology. This is what she does. But anyway, yeah, that theater, like, it really shows like how much he was enjoying the violence he was seeing on the screen. And I think it was like a movie trailer for Chaos, I think is what the movie was called. Like, you can tell auditorially, because that's, you just hear it. You could tell it was super violent. And just like the way he was watching was just like, he was all about it. He was just taking it in, just loving the violence. And with the movie, they find another way to insert footage from the first film. The actual movie they're seeing, which, is kind of a funny nod, is footage from the first film. So it's literally like the story of Billy being shown on the screen. So I thought that was kind of funny, but then I was just like, also though, this is just kind of a lazy way to pad the time more, to put more footage from the first film in. Excuse me for that little tickle. The jumper cable eye explosion scene is pretty solid. When he rams that guy's head down into the engine of the car and puts the jumper cables in and shocks him until the eyes pop. I was like, this is a dumb kill until the eyes popped. And then I was like, okay, well, that's good payoff. The mechanics of the gun scene that happened right after that, terrible. The fact that the police officer is pointing the gun right at him and he just like grabs it and is able to wrench it around enough to shoot him right in the forehead, and the fact that when they show that he's then holding the gun pointed at him makes absolutely no sense, because the motion he does to wrench it up would have been a motion like this, where he just like wrenches it up and does it like that and it would be upside down. But you see it and he's then holding it like right at him like he had the gun the whole time. Continuity issues. That's all. The garbage day line. You knew we were getting to it at some point. The garbage day line. Yes, it's funny. Yes, it is awesome. But it also signals something else. The garbage day line is basically Ricky thinking, I am taking out the trash right now. Because that's the whole thing with the morality. Naughty versus nice. Punishment. Like it was, seen with the whole Santa Claus thing. Like it was ingrained in he and Billy in the orphanage. He's taking out the trash. And that's what that line means. Although it's what people point to as just being hilarious because the way it's delivered. Very funny. Unlike Billy, Ricky stops adhering to a code when he starts his rampage. Throughout the killing that Billy does, he's always adhering to that code. He's looking for, are you being naughty or are you being nice? And everyone he kills in his mind has been naughty. Ricky, on the other hand, starts that way, but then when he's on that full rampage, literally shooting a guy just taking out his garbage, he knows nothing about this guy. So it's not a naughty or nice thing at that point. Shooting the person who's just driving down the road in their car, same thing. He's become totally unhinged, and at that point, it's no longer about the morality and the naughty versus nice. It's just about killing. And you do see the moment in the first film where Billy comes to that impasse, where he could take that choice and make it just about killing and not adhere to the code anymore. That's the one where he's talking to the little girl and he keeps pressing her like, are you sure that you haven't been naughty? Are you sure you haven't been naughty? He's looking for her to say something that will allow him in his mind to kill her. Because he wants to, but he's still adhering to that code. Ricky totally breaks from the code, which makes him worse. With how concerned the orderly was with Ricky, why did he leave him in there alone with Bloom? Yeah, that didn't make any sense. And then obviously he gets out because the door's not locked, and he's going to Mother Superior's house because he has unfinished business. Because as he has said in the film, everything that happened to Billy was caused by the orphanage. The nuns ingrained that into him and made it happen. So I do think this film and the first film has a very strong anti-church mentality with it, or anti-religion mentality, just saying that they caused this, they were the bad ones. I do think it's very stupid, though, that Mother Superior lives in a house that the address is 666. I understand it was supposed to be kind of like this clever, funny thing, but it wasn't then, it's not now, it's just kind of dumb, but goes along with the writing of this film. I love all the noises that Ricky does make, though, when he's wrecking Mother Superior's house, when he finally busts in with the axe. Like, that scene when she's kind of, like, taking herself in the wheelchair down the hallway, and you just hear him wrecking stuff in her main room. Like, listen to all these weird noises he's making. It's hilarious. I like that scene just for that reason. When Mother Superior says that Ricky needs to be punished, it echoes how both Ricky and Billy were driven to killing because of how she embedded the naughty versus nice mentality into them. That's once again showing this origin based off of what we saw in the first film and based off of what Ricky said in the second film. It's just reiterating that. The very end of this film mirrors the first film when the cop says to Mother Superior, "He's gone, sister." Like Billy basically said that Santa was gone at the end of the first one, and then cutting to Ricky when Ricky says punishment in the first film. This is a very similar ending. Billy says Santa Claus is gone. The police officer is basically saying to Mother Superior, Santa Claus is gone, because at that point Ricky was dressed up as Santa Claus. And then you get the stinger at the end of, In the first one, oh no, maybe Ricky is like Billy because he says punishment. And then in the second one, the stinger of, oh no, Ricky may not actually be dead because he like looks at the camera. Take note that a lot of the time when they keep cutting back and forth between Ricky and the story of Billy in the very beginning when they're in that in the interview with Dr. Bloom, that Ricky ends up in a lot of the same positions that Billy was right when they cut to Ricky. So it's trying to visually show without specifically calling it out that Ricky is like Billy, that they're basically like the same person, and that as Ricky is telling this story, he's so involved in the story of what happened to Billy, and it's like he's reliving it through Billy in a sense. I get that this is Ricky's perspective for what happened, but it takes the power of Billy's struggle away from the film, which is what made the footage from the first film so good. The fact that they're just taking so much from the first film, but you're not seeing the entire progression of what happened to Billy and how he got there, which is well done in the first film, it really just waters that footage down, in my opinion. So I think if anyone's seeing just this film and not having seen the first one, they're missing a lot of great stuff from the first one that I wish they were getting. So just saying. I do like the version, this is my final thing on this, I love the version of bad acting that Eric Freeman does. He's the one who plays Ricky. It's fun and funny. I love his version of bad acting. He's what will bring me back to this film, truly, because it's not a great film, it's just him. So I said I was going to rate this in 2 ways, out of 5 stars with half stars in play. As far as like a straight up film goes, 1.5 stars, but as a so bad it's good film, 3.5 stars, I feel like. So there's a lot there still. There's a lot of meat on the bone for even now, so it's enjoyable. Now, I'm excited to get to 3, 4, and 5, so you can look forward to those. They will all be coming out in the same month of December 2021 when I'm doing this. Now, I do need to let people know really, really quick, for the first film and this one, Uncle Pete, he goes by Your Friendly Neighborhood Uncle Pete on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. He does a series called Nails in the Coffin. Basically, he breaks down the kills from films. And when he's doing his Nails in the Coffin for films that I've done reviews on, I view them as a really good companion piece because I'm doing a bunch of like analytical stuff and not necessarily talking specifically about the kills and going into depth on those the way he does. His is a very different thing. So it's a great pairing. So he has Nails in the Coffin for the first Silent Night, Deadly Night and Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. So check those out. Once again, Your Friendly Neighborhood Uncle Pete, just search that, and that is who will come up for his YouTube channel. So go check that out. Also, do me a quick favor, hit subscribe if you haven't already. This is your way to repay me if you like this video or any video I have ever done. I'm not getting paid doing this or anything, so I need motivation, and the motivation in the form of people subscribing. So I really do appreciate that when people do it. So anyway, put some comments down here. Let's talk about this film. Love it, hate it, in between. We can get nerdy about it. Let's do that. Regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to check this video out. And until next time, keep it brutal.